All right, let's dive into poker tells today.
Uh,
You know those little things that can give away a player's hand,
yeah.
even when they're trying to hide it?
Like a little window.
Yeah. It's like being a detective, but instead of clues, we're looking for tells.
Right.
And we've got some awesome sources for this deep dive. Seasoned poker pros, a magician, and get this,
Oh, this is good.
a self-proclaimed fish who says they found like the one foolproof tell.
Mm.
I mean, if there was one tell that always worked, wouldn't everyone know it by now?
Yeah, you'd think.
Right. Okay, so our experts, they sort of break down tells into two types, subconscious and conscious.
Yeah, subconscious tells, those are like leaks in your poker face. Those little movements or behaviors that slip out, you know?
Even when you're trying to control them.
Exactly. Think of it like even if you're super cool under pressure.
You can't always hide everything.
Right. Those tiny little signs of stress or excitement can give you away.
So, like, if you're holding your cards really tight.
Yeah. Or your hands are shaky when you're making a big bet.
Even if you're trying to look all confident.
Exactly. It's like your body is saying, hey, something's up here.
Right. And those subconscious tells, those are the ones that can really give you away when you're bluffing. Right?
Yeah, definitely.
Like if someone's constantly rechecking their cards,
Mm.
or they take a quick peek at their chips after a good flop, it's like they can't help themselves.
It's a little window into their mind.
So what about the other type, the conscious tells? Those are more about being sneaky, right?
Yeah, conscious tells are more deliberate. It's like the players are putting on a performance.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah.
Like actors on a stage.
Exactly. A classic example is what we call Hollywooding.
Oh, I know exactly what you mean.
You know, that big sigh,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
dramatic pause before they call,
The furrowed brow.
all designed to throw the other players off.
And what about all the talking at the table? Is that a conscious tell too?
Oh, for sure. Talking a lot, especially if it has nothing to do with the hand,
Yeah.
that can be a way to mask emotions. It's like creating this smoke screen. So it's like they're trying to distract everyone. Or maybe they're over-explaining their play when they're bluffing,
Yeah.
just to try to convince everyone, and maybe themselves,
Right.
that they've got a good hand.
Exactly. And this is where things get really interesting because our sources have revealed some pretty specific tells that you can look for.
I love this part.
Yeah.
So one that I found really interesting is the green juice tell.
Oh, yeah, that one's a classic.
So apparently, if someone's chugging their drink, especially if it's something green and healthy looking,
Like a green smoothie.
yeah, that could mean they're bluffing.
It's not really about the drink itself, but more about that nervous energy that makes you want to gulp something down.
Okay, yeah, I see.
When you're bluffing, there's that underlying tension, and sometimes it comes out in weird ways.
Like fidgeting or talking fast or needing
Ugh.
to take a big swig.
Exactly. It's a way to release that nervous energy.
Makes sense. What about like excessive talking on the river?
Oh, yeah. Especially if they're over-explaining their play. That can actually be a sign of weakness, too.
Wouldn't that make you think they have a strong hand? Like they're confident enough to talk about it.
You would think, but actually, it's often the opposite.
Interesting.
When we're bluffing, we tend to overcompensate,
Oh, I see.
trying to sell this story that's not really true.
So it's like they're trying to fill the silence because they're worried about what it might reveal.
Precisely. And then there's the classic tell of eye contact, or rather avoiding eye contact.
Oh, yeah, like shifty eyes.
Yeah. Looking nervous, shifting in your seat. All of those can indicate a weak hand.
It's like that fight or flight response, right?
Mm-hmm.
When we're feeling vulnerable, we want to make ourselves smaller, less noticeable.
Exactly. And at the poker table, that can mean avoiding eye contact, slumping in your chair, just trying to disappear.
Wow, I'm seeing now how much psychology goes into poker. It's not just about the cards.
No, not at all.
It's like reading your opponent's mind.
Right. It's a game of skill, strategy, and definitely psychology.
Okay, so let's switch gears a bit and talk about online poker tells.
Yeah.
Because it's a little bit different.
Yeah.
One that stood out to me is the insta-raise.
Oh, yeah, especially on the flop.
Yeah. That often means a mediocre hand, right?
It can. What's telling about that is the lack of thought behind it.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
It suggests they didn't take time to think about their options.
So it's an impulsive move.
Yeah, more impulsive than calculated.
Okay, what about that bizarre stack size tell?
Yes. Buying in for a weird amount, like $67.43.
Yeah, what's up with that?
That can be a big red flag. It often means they have their whole bankroll on the table.
Ooh, risky.
Very risky, and often a sign of an inexperienced player.
Because a seasoned player would have a better bankroll management strategy.
Exactly. They wouldn't risk everything in one go.
Okay, so we've covered some interesting tells, but there's so much more to this, right?
Absolutely. There's a whole world of tells out there. Like, have you ever noticed how some players will kind of protect their cards when they have a strong hand?
You mean like holding them close to their chest?
Yeah, or even slightly covering them with their hands.
It's like they're subconsciously guarding something valuable.
Exactly. It's like a natural instinct to protect what's important.
And on the flip side, if someone loosely pushes their cards forward,
Right.
like they're about to toss them in,
Yeah, it can signal a lack of interest.
like they're ready to fold.
Right, they're not attached to those cards.
Interesting. Okay, what about this one? Glancing at your chips after hitting a good hand.
Oh, that's a subtle but powerful one.
I don't think I've ever noticed that.
It's a quick glance, but it betrays their excitement. They're already thinking about how much they might win.
So they're subconsciously drawn to the prize.
Exactly. And then you have the opposite scenario, the player who makes a big show of being disappointed.
Yeah, like groaning and complaining.
Yeah, but then they bet big.
Oh, that's classic. The woe is me act. You see that all the time on TV poker.
Right. That's often reverse psychology.
Oh.
They're feigning weakness.
To lure their opponents.
Exactly. Hoping the others will think they have a weak hand and bet more aggressively.
Smart. Okay, what about body language in general?
Oh, that's a gold mine. Like, how someone sits can tell you a lot.
So if they're sitting up straight, leaning forward,
Yeah. Engaged with the table, that usually means they're feeling confident.
and someone who's slumped back in their chair, maybe with their feet pulled back,
Yeah, that can indicate a lack of confidence.
like they're trying to make themselves smaller.
Right. It's like their body language is mirroring their internal state.
What about mirroring your opponent's behavior?
Oh, that's an interesting one. Some pros believe that mimicking your opponent can help you build rapport.
Interesting. I've heard about this in like sales and stuff, but never in poker.
It can be a way to disarm them. By subtly mirroring their body language
Yeah.
or speech patterns, you create a sense of connection.
So it's like saying, hey, we're on the same team here.
Exactly. Now, let's talk about one that sounds almost too good to be true. Gum chewing.
Gum chewing.
This is one our magician expert swears by.
I'm intrigued.
He says players who are bluffing will often stop chewing their gum
Why is that?
because they're subconsciously trying to avoid drawing attention to themselves.
Oh, interesting.
It's like holding your breath, metaphorically speaking.
Trying to be invisible.
Exactly. Remember, bluffing is all about deception.
Makes sense.
So anything that helps you blend in can be an advantage.
So if someone suddenly freezes up and their jaw stops working,
Right.
maybe it's time to raise the stakes.
It might be. The thing about tells is once you become aware of them, you start seeing them everywhere.
Yeah, you start overthinking it.
Right. But that awareness is the first step to controlling your own tells.
Okay, this is all fascinating stuff.
There's more, too. Like, have you noticed that players will often disconnect from the game when they have really bad cards?
Yeah, I could see that. It's like they're just trying to mentally check out.
Right. It's a coping mechanism.
Okay,
They might fidget, look around, or even start talking about something totally unrelated to poker.
just to distract themselves.
Exactly. But the interesting thing is, they might do the same thing if they have really good cards.
Why would they do that?
To avoid giving anything away, they don't want to tip off their opponents, so they might try to act disinterested.
To throw people off the scent.
Exactly. They might chat, check their phone, just to seem casual.
So disconnecting from the game can be a tell for both weakness and strength.
It can be. That's why context is so important.
You have to look at their overall behavior and how the game is going.
Exactly. It's not just about one isolated action.
Okay, what about finger shakes? Our magician expert mentioned those.
Oh, yeah. Those are tough to fake.
Why is that?
It's a physiological response to stress. It often happens when someone's making a big bet, especially if they're bluffing.
So even if they're trying to look confident, their body betrays them.
Exactly. Like their subconscious is saying, I'm not as sure as I'm pretending to be.
Oh, man. This is making me paranoid about my own poker face.
Well, remember, one of our sources claims to have found the one foolproof tell.
Right. But is there really such a thing?
That's where a healthy dose of skepticism comes in. You see, experienced players often use reverse tells
Oh, yeah.
to mislead their opponents.
So they're intentionally acting in a way that doesn't match their hand.
Exactly, like a double bluff. It's all part of the game of deception.
So how do you tell the difference between a real tell and a fake one?
That's the challenge. You have to develop a baseline for each player, observe how they typically act in different situations, and look for any deviations from that norm.
So there's no magic bullet, no single tell that always works.
Unfortunately, no. It's all about understanding the individual player and looking for patterns in their behavior.
This is making me want to go practice my tell spotting skills right now.
It's a great skill to have, not just for poker, but for life in general.
Yeah, for sure. But it sounds like reading tells is just one part of being a good poker player.
Oh, absolutely. You also need to understand the odds, probabilities, vetting patterns.
The math of it all.
Exactly. It's about combining analytical skills with your knowledge of human behavior.
This has been so insightful. I feel like I have a whole new perspective on poker now.
I'm glad to hear that.
It's not just about the cards, it's about the people playing them.
That's what makes it such a captivating game. It's a constant challenge, always something new to learn.
I'm officially hooked on poker tells. But before we move on, are there any other insights you want to share?
Well, there are a few more tells that you might find interesting.
I'm all ears.
One that's often overlooked is the micro-expression.
Micro-expression. That sounds intense.
They're these super fast facial expressions lasting for just a fraction of a second.
Wow, that's quick.
They're involuntary reactions to emotions, so they can tell you a lot about what a player is really thinking or feeling.
So even if someone has a great poker face, these micro-expressions can slip through.
Exactly. It's like a subconscious leak of emotion.
I'm going to need some serious detective skills to catch those. What should I be looking for?
Well, common ones include tightening of the lips, furrowing of the brows, or slight dilation of the pupils.
So tiny but telling changes in their face.
Precisely. It takes practice to spot them, but they can be very revealing.
Like a secret language of the face.
In a way, yes. It's the body's way of expressing emotions that we might be trying to hide.
This is making me realize how much we communicate without even saying a word.
That's the power of nonverbal communication. It's often more honest than our words.
Okay, I'm definitely going to be paying more attention to those micro expressions now. What about, are there any tells that are specific to women?
That's a great question. It's a bit of a debate in the poker world.
I can imagine. There are probably lots of stereotypes out there.
There are. But one observation is that women tend to be more expressive with their hands when they're excited or nervous.
Oh, okay. So more hand gestures or fiddling with their chip.
Exactly. And while it's not a universal rule, it's something to be aware of when playing against women.
So like, what kind of hand gestures should I be looking for?
One that's often mentioned is touching the neck or hair. It can be a subconscious way of self-soothing.
Oh, okay. So if someone's repeatedly touching their neck or twirling their hair, it could be a sign they're feeling the pressure.
It could be. Of course, you have to look at the whole picture, like what's happening in the game and their overall behavior.
This is making me hyper aware of my own body language. I'm going to be self-conscious about every move I make.
Well, that's the thing about tells. Once you know about them, you can't unknow them.
True.
But the good news is, this knowledge can help you in all kinds of situations, not just poker.
Yeah, like reading people in general.
Exactly.
This is going to change how I watch poker forever. Are there any other gender-specific tells I should know about?
Some people have observed that women might be more animated with their facial expressions when they're bluffing.
Oh, so like more raised eyebrows or wider eyes.
Exactly, like they're overcompensating for feeling unsure.
So they're trying to project strength even though they're vulnerable.
Exactly. It's a classic conscious tell, a deliberate attempt to mislead.
It's amazing how the mind works. We're always trying to outsmart each other.
Yeah.
Even in something as simple as a card game.
That's part of what makes poker so interesting. It's a game of skill, strategy, psychology, and definitely deception.
Okay, I'm ready to put all this new knowledge to the test, but before we wrap up part one, any final thoughts about gender-specific tells?
Well, it's important to remember that these are just general trends.
Yeah.
Not hard and fast rules.
Of course.
Every player is different.
Right.
You have to look at each person individually.
Makes sense. So treat each player like a unique puzzle.
That's a great way to put it. And that's what makes poker so challenging and rewarding.
It's like a mental chess match.
Exactly. And the more you learn about human behavior, the better you'll be at the game.
All right, let's do a quick recap before we move on.
Right.
We've talked about subconscious and conscious tells, like fidgeting and Hollywooding. We explored online tells, like insta-raises and weird stack sizes. And we even touched on some gender-specific tells.
Right.
This deep dive has been a real eye-opener. Before we finish part one, is there anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah. One last thing that I find really fascinating is how tells can be self-fulfilling prophecies.
Self-fulfilling prophecies. How does that work?
Okay, imagine you're playing against someone and you're convinced they have a tell for bluffing.
Oh,
Like they always scratch their nose when they're lying.
I'm following.
Now, the next time they scratch their nose, you might be more likely to call their bet, even if you don't have a great hand.
Just because I think they're bluffing.
Exactly. Your belief in their tell is influencing your decision.
Even if it might not be accurate.
Right. And what's even more interesting is that our beliefs can actually affect other people's behavior.
Wait, really?
Yeah. So if you believe someone has a certain tell,
You might act in a way that makes them do it.
it's possible. It's like you're creating this feedback loop. Your beliefs shape your perceptions, and your perceptions shape your actions.
This is like mind-bending.
It really highlights how powerful our minds are,
Yeah.
both in how we see the world and how we interact with others.
It's like a poker version of the placebo effect.
In a way, it is.
This is making me realize that poker is really as much about psychology as it is about the cards.
Absolutely. It's a game where understanding yourself is just as important as understanding your opponents.
Wow, this is deep, but also super fascinating.
It's a reminder that there's always more to learn, both in poker and in life.
This deep dive has been incredible. We've barely scratched the surface, but it's given me so much to think about.
We're just getting started. In part 2, we'll explore how you can use your understanding of tells to control your own behavior and become a more formidable player.
I can't wait. This deep dive is just getting started. Welcome back to our deep dive on poker tells. We've talked about how to spot tells, but now how can we control our own tells? How can we use this knowledge to actually get better at poker?
Well, one of the most powerful techniques is to develop a routine.
A routine.
Yeah, for like everything, how you handle your cards, your bets, your chips. Just create a set of actions that you do the same way every time, no matter what hand you have.
So it's like you're always moving the same way.
Right, you're operating on autopilot.
So people can't tell if you're bluffing or not.
Exactly. They can't pick up on those subtle variations in your behavior because there aren't any.
Because you're always doing the same thing.
Right. And it's not just about physical routines either.
Okay.
Mental routines are super important too.
What do you mean?
Pay attention to your breathing,
Mm-hmm.
how you're talking to yourself in your head, where your focus is.
Yeah.
Try to stay calm and steady no matter what cards you have or what other players are doing.
So it's like mastering your inner game.
Exactly. If you can control your emotions, you're less likely to give off tells through your face or body language.
So it's like poker meditation.
You could say that.
Okay, so let's talk about specific tells, like shaky hands when you're betting big. That's a classic, right?
It is. And it's hard to control because your adrenaline's pumping.
Yeah, for sure. Any tips for that?
Well, here's a simple trick. Try pressing your feet firmly into the floor.
Oh, interesting.
It can help ground you and reduce those hand tremors.
Okay. Just a little physical adjustment to help with the nerves.
Exactly. Another common tell is too much eye movement.
Yeah, when you're nervous or trying to bluff, your eyes dart all over the place. What can you do about that?
Try picking a single point to focus on.
Okay.
It could be on the table, a picture, even just your own hands. That steady gaze will project more confidence and control.
It's like a visual anchor to keep you focused.
Exactly.
What about the green juice tell? I'm definitely thinking twice about ordering a smoothie at the poker table now.
Well, the key with that one is to make sure you're staying hydrated throughout the game.
Okay.
If you're sipping your drink regularly, you won't have that sudden urge to guzzle it down when you're feeling stressed.
Makes sense. Okay, what about excessive talking?
Yeah, that one can be tough to control.
Especially if you're just a naturally talkative person.
Right, but you can try to be more strategic with your words.
Okay.
Instead of just chatting to fill the silence, really focus on observing and listening.
Okay.
When you do talk, make it count.
Less is more.
Exactly. It's like you're a poker ninja, silent, stealthy.
Love it. But what about those super fast micro expressions? Those seem almost impossible to control.
Yeah, they happen so fast you might not even realize you're doing it.
Right.
But mindfulness can help.
Mindfulness.
Yeah, like paying close attention to your thoughts and emotions in the moment.
Okay.
The more aware you are of your internal state, the better you can manage those tiny facial expressions.
So it's like you're watching your own thoughts and feelings.
Right. It's like having an internal mirror.
This is incredible. It feels like we're hacking the poker mind.
And remember, practice makes perfect. The more you practice, the better you'll get at controlling your tells, both physically and mentally.
I'm ready to hit the training ground. But before we move on to part 3, is there anything else we need to remember?
Yeah. Don't try to be a robot.
I was just thinking that. Like, if you're too focused on not moving a muscle, you'll look super stiff.
Exactly. That's just as suspicious as giving away a tell.
Right.
The key is to find that balance between controlling your tells and still being yourself.
So still be relaxed and have fun.
Right. But just be aware of the signals you might be sending.
So it's like, find that sweet spot.
Exactly.
This is all so insightful. I already feel like I have more control over my poker face. But now I can't wait to hear what you have for us in part 3.
Oh, get ready for some next level stuff. We're going to talk about how to use tells strategically.
Okay.
Not just hiding your own, but actually using tells to manipulate your opponents.
I love it. Give me all the secrets.
We'll get into all that after a quick break.
We're back and ready for the final level of poker tell mastery. We've learned how to spot tells, how to control our own, but now it's time to weaponize them.
Exactly. We're going to use tells strategically to actually manipulate our opponents.
Ooh. I like where this is going.
Remember reverse tells?
Yeah, like acting the opposite of what your hand is.
Right. You're creating a false narrative to lead your opponents down the wrong path.
It's like planting those seeds of doubt.
Exactly.
Make them question everything.
Exactly. So let's say you have a monster hand,
Okay.
but you want to get your opponent to bluff.
How do you do that?
You could try giving off a tell that makes you look weak.
Like what?
A quick glance at your chips, maybe a little shake of your head, just something to make them think you're unsure.
So you're baiting them into making a mistake.
Exactly. It's like poker mind games.
This is awesome.
But you can't use the same fake tell every time.
Right, they'd catch on.
You got to be unpredictable. Mix it up.
Keep them guessing.
Exactly. Sometimes fake a tell, sometimes show a real tell, but mask it with something else.
So it's like a dance between deception and being genuine.
You got it.
This is next level poker. It's not just about the cards. It's like psychological warfare.
It's about understanding human behavior.
This deep dive has completely changed how I see poker.
It's about more than just winning money.
It's about strategy, observation, and psychology.
Exactly.
I feel like I've learned so much, not just about poker, but about people in general.
That's the beauty of it.
So, as we wrap up our deep dive on poker tells,
Mm-hmm.
I think the biggest thing I've learned is
What's that?
it's not just about what you see, it's how you interpret it.
Right?
The same tell can mean different things depending on the player, the situation, even your own mindset.
Context is everything.
It's a good reminder that poker is complex. There's no easy answers.
Just like life.
The more you observe, the more you learn.
And the better you'll be at understanding people.
Not just at the poker table, but everywhere. Well, that's all the time we have for this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for joining us. And remember, keep those eyes peeled, those minds sharp.
Good luck out there.
And may your insights lead you to victory, both in the game and in life.